Everybody, welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm Spencer Martin from the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. I'm back with Andrew Vontz from the Choose the Hard Way podcast, the betterlab.io. We're talking Giro d'Italia stages 1 through 5. It's already going quickly, Andrew. I'm shocked at how fast this Giro is flying by before our eyes. But do you want to plug anything about developments at the Better Lab before we?
Really quickly, because we've got to get to this Kraken race, G's Pub. That's my new favorite. Yeah, so the Better Lab helps you build mindful science-backed practices and to sleep better in the time you have. If you're like me, I'm a dad. I love riding my bike. Boy, I would like to feel good for those things. And the world's greatest performance enhancer that is legal and free is getting better sleep. It can be kind of confusing to put all the information you've read into action or to figure out, what do you do with this stuff from your wearable? So anyway, tune in with your body. Come check us out, thebetterlab.io. We now have an app in the Apple App Store, and we are in early beta. So try it out. We love your feedback, and the feedback you provide helps us build an awesome product. So give it a spin.
Another awesome product is the Giro d'Italia.
It sure is. Yeah.
A little down on this thing coming into it, but I do think that the taking away of some of those big mountain stages or just maybe an overwhelming amount of total vertical meters has really opened things up. The course design's been great. I thought the opening weekend was perfect. And then these sprint stages, every one of these sprint stages has had a wrinkle today. And Andrew, I don't know why they're doing this. Benjamin Thomas wins from Cofidis, breaks the seal, first one of the year for Cofidis.
I'm getting shivers,
which they needed. But I don't know if you've noticed this about this Giro, but this breakaway goes, they don't give it any time. Like they're holding it at 90 seconds. Guys are leaving the breakaway. And this has happened multiple times this Giro. Just like if they're not going to give us a gap, we're not going back. And it's just kind of a continuation of a trend that's been going on for years in pro cycling, where instead of letting the break go out to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes and pulling it back, teams have thought, I don't know if the science actually bears us out, but if we just ride slightly harder all the time and keep that gap closer, like 2 minutes, we spend less energy pulling it back. And that may be true, but here's what happens. The breakaway gets pissed and says, if you're going to keep it at 90 seconds, we're going to set up. And that's what happened. And they catch them with like 111K to go. And then you know why you don't do this? Because then another breakaway goes and it's better people and they only have to stay away for like 70K. And that's exactly what happened. So instead of chasing a tired breakaway in the last 20 kilometers, you're chasing a fresh breakaway that has stronger riders because they've picked their spot better. Total disaster, total meltdown, and the break wins. I was actually pleasantly surprised to see a breakaway getting a win this early in a Grand Tour. You wouldn't normally see that on what should be a sprint stage, but what have been your big picture thoughts on the course so far?
My primary observation is that I believe that Netflix strategically released Ripley to promote the Giro d'Italia.
I was just thinking about that.
Right? I mean, obviously, so clearly timed to coincide with one of the greatest Giros ever to happen. I do wonder at this point, I'm optimistic. I'm not a cynical guy about professional bike racing. Not anymore. Maybe I used to be for a minute. I'm certainly not anymore. I have to wonder if we're going to get into one of those scenarios where, we've got this wild cycling 2.0 stuff, fireworks going off in the opening week, and then the final 20 days of the race are incredibly boring. I hope not.
Yeah.
Right?
I had this thought too. And I'm even thinking back to Tours de France where it has started exciting and then it's my Lord.
Yeah, but I got to say, I've got a couple of questions for you, Spencer. The first question that I have, and I don't think we're going to get into some of the controversy around shades of pink. There's a deeper story to that related to the demise of an entire soccer team in a plane crash, I believe. So I think there's been some misinterpretation in the press related to skin suit gate. But is sprinting dead? Is sprinting as a discipline dead? Do these riders, they're so trained? They mentioned Mario Cipollini today multiple times. And when they mention his name, of course, has won the most stages of any rider ever in the Giro. I believe he's won 42 stages. They did not mention, I believe he's in prison right now. Do you know if he's in or out of prison?
I think it's a suspended sentence, which
means... it's a suspended sentence. Okay.
Which I always used to think meant that you do it later, but I think it just means we don't want you taking up space. So just don't go to jail, even though you've been sentenced to jail. It seems like a pretty cush gig to me.
Horrible stuff. Nonetheless, is sprinting done? Like it used to be, Cipollini would have that sprint train going for like 10K. The teams would be lined up in a drag race. They designed the stages for this guy. Parcours have changed. Riders' body shapes have changed. There's Ghana. Like we've got to get to Ghana in a moment, but is the era of the traditional sprinter just completely dead?
Yeah, it'd be like the sprinter's dead. Long live the sprinter. Because what you're describing, the traditional, and I think that kind of peaked the heyday of the sprinter in quotations. That's HTC, like 2010-esque. You remember that where
Kentucky,
the lead out is going on for like 15K coming into the finish.
It's like a Legion crit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like that is over. But what has emerged from the nuclear waste that is the sprint landscape are like new and improved sprinters. Like Jonathan Milan is massive. The guy's like 85 kilos, puts out like, kids, if you want to try this at home, the guy puts out 1600 watts for 20 seconds in the final sprint. That is unbelievable. Like if you hit that as a peak, you'd say, man, I probably could be a world tour sprinter. You'll try holding that for 20 seconds at the end of a stage. So, these guys are unbelievably powerful. Like, Tim Merlier, really big, powerful guy. But what we're seeing with Fabio Jakobsen, Caleb Ewan, like they just can't climb well enough. And these courses are harder and harder. The organizers are giving them the layups. So you have to be so versatile to get over everything, navigate the chaos that is modern racing, because also the breakaway is smarter. The breakaway doesn't say, oh, I'm gonna give it my all and then just get caught. It's like, well, if they're gonna hold us at a tight leash, let's set up and let chaos reign when they pull us in. And you have to be better, like a better all-around racer. Like I know you're a Marcel Kittel guy. I never was a big fan of Kittel because I just felt like he looked like he was carved out of stone, and they brought him in and put him on a bike and he just had like a rocket on his back, but he just didn't feel like a fully complete bike rider to me.
Sure.
Where Jonathan Milan is like one step past that, where it's like, yes, he's a big, massive dude who puts out 2000 watts in a straight line, but he's a good climber and he's a good one-day racer, and he kind of understands the dynamics of racing, and he can fend for himself a little bit better. And we should also mention they've shrunk teams, right? They took a rider off each team, which really has drastically changed the sprint leadouts. And yeah, I'd say sprinting is dead, but also has never been better, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. Another thing that seems to have changed is it seems like no one tries to save energy anymore in Grand Tours. Right? I'm just like, what's going on here? I have this macro question of, are we just seeing Pog training for the Tour de France? Because there have been a couple of MVDP moments here in the first stanzas of this race. And the same thing with Ghana in that break. I believe it was yesterday, right? Like he got in the break, then dropped out of the break, and then tried to win the sprint. Like what is he doing?
Well, I think the original plan was get in the early breakaway.
He's not getting in the early breakaway. He's Ghana. No one's letting him go.
Well, yeah, and that's what happened. They were holding the leash tight, and he thought, well, this isn't going to work. But I mean, kudos to them. Like, do you remember Wout van Aert a few years ago at the Tour? He's in the yellow jersey, gets in a breakaway. It clearly was never going to stick, and he's like riding Quinn Simmons off his wheel, but he probably could have won the sprint. He should have done what Ghana did. Just recognize this isn't going to work. Let's sit up. Let's reevaluate. And, he did attack at a good spot. That probably was the best chance of him winning. My big question is, I love that they're doing it, but that leaves Geraint Thomas a little bit alone. I didn't see Thomas. Maybe I could go back and watch it more closely, but I bet Thomas was by himself. Maybe he had one teammate. Like, what if Thomas has a problem there and needs to be paced back up to the front?
I think on the last episode, we were talking about that Thomas Pidcock interaction in Tour de France Unchained, where Pidcock's cleared hot to go for the stage win. They come in and tell Thomas during his massage, and he was not happy with that. And then thus far in the Giro, which ostensibly he has the second best chance of winning after Pog, we have an Ineos stage victory in stage one. And then we see Ghana going into breaks. And Ghana's in a really critical support role because he, of course, is a GC rider in training, as we know. He's been working on his climbing.
Yeah. I don't know. I might be ready to sunset that take. But I do kind of I looked at him climbing yesterday thinking, I mean, he averaged 600 watts for that climb. You think, like, can he do 500 for 20 minutes on a climb? Yeah, we could be talking there. Wait till Jonathan Milan starts going for the GC. What if he just never gives up his GC position here? Or I guess he's already behind because we had already had a summit finish. But to go back to you're not seeing a lot of, I guess, classic energy saving, but I'm also just thinking through the stages as we discuss this. They've been pretty tricky. So the best, you kind of have to be at the front. Like we saw yesterday, a bunch of crashes on a wet descent. If you're a GC rider, I think Ben O'Connor went down. Like, that's no good if you're Tadej Pogačar. So the safest thing to do is stay at the front. And if you compare, obviously the attack at the end of stage 3, I think maybe a little silly. If he has a bad third week, you look back on that and say, did you need to do that? But it was really fun. And it probably does seed a bit of chaos into the race. And now all the other GC contenders are like, every time there's a hill, like, is he going? Is he going? And yeah, maybe there's a benefit of that. I still don't totally love that move, but I will say, like, Luke Plapp from Jayco, he's here riding for GC. He sits at the back every day, like almost last wheel. And like today, he got dropped by Alpecin de Koenig's pace, like the sprinter's pace, because it's really hard to ride at the back. Maybe you could say it's a little safer, I guess, in some ways, but you could get caught behind crashes and then have to chase on, or the group splits up on a pretty mild climb because one team's hammering at the front and there's people in the middle getting dropped. He probably is. I would like to look at their power files. I would bet he's using more energy, riding a more conservative race than Tadej Pogačar. So he's spending a lot of energy, but I don't think, and someone asked him this question, like, are you spending too much at this race? And he's like, I haven't spent a dime this whole time. I don't know what you're talking about. This is all expenses paid. So clearly it's not bothering him.
Yeah, I mean, I love seeing Geraint Thomas go with Pog on that attack, and it suggested to me the old man's still got a bit of that. Got a bit of that fight in him, right? Like, I didn't expect him to do that, but at the same time, I didn't think Pog's move was going to stick, and you got to go, right? Like, if you're in it, you got to go.
Yeah, I thought that was more, I guess you're hedging your risk, because what if it does stick?
Exactly.
And you didn't follow. And also it's symbolic. I think the rest, as I was waiting for you to log on here. So Tadej Pogačar's won 2 Tours de France. Geraint Thomas won 1. I guess Nairo Quintana has won a Grand Tour. We don't even know.
What did he? I don't even remember. Did he win the Giro? Do you remember
this? He won the Giro.
Okay.
In a little bit of controversy, they neutralized the stage because it was so cold. He didn't hear it and just kept going, and then won the stage by a lot. Then won the overall. Yeah. I think he also win a Vuelta where they attacked Froome in the neutral zone. Maybe I'm misremembering that.
This isn't cool. We'll have to look into this.
Yeah, but
you could Grand Tour. We owe you that respect. So
we could say he's won a Grand Tour. We don't really know what's going on with his. I feel like a lot is confusing about Quintana, but there might not be. I was looking through. There might not be another rider besides those 3 that has ever, or no, Damiano Cruzzo has podiumed in a Grand Tour, but outside of him, I don't know if anyone else is. Oh no, Romain Bardet. But so those 3 have won Grand Tours, but there's not many Grand Tour podium finishers, even in this race. And I think Thomas kind of announced himself as it's me and Pog. There's no one else here on this level. This is it.
Yeah. And what has Caleb Ewan announced? I did hear the commentators talking today. I couldn't find anything about this, but they mentioned that he was complaining about his team and positioning yesterday. Really, man? And
if you feel like you are maybe listening to the wrong episode and you've gotten your years confused, you've not.
A time machine.
This is what he was doing last year on his team, which is why they didn't want to retain him and paid for him to go to another team. And this is not a good look from your guy here, Andrew. And he's saying that they're splitting their resources for GC and sprints, which they should do. I mean, unless you're Little Trek and you have Jonathan Milan, you can't go all in for Caleb Ewan on the sprints here. And there's guys doing well in these sprints, without full team support. So it can be done. It's really not a good look. And he's not even competitive in these sprints.
Yeah, I'm looking through the results. So he was 12th on stage 4. It has a bit of that it's definitely not a good look. And watching him in the sprints, I feel like when Cav has been in these situations and he does have the ability he has the legs to actually win the stage, you see him, doing extraordinary things and just maneuvering his way through, freelancing, getting to the front and taking the win. So I don't think it's a team issue. It's like once in position, he just doesn't have that extra gear to catapult past everyone else.
I feel like I don't even know if he has the gear to get in position. That'd be my question right now, because we saw Phil Bauhaus yesterday. Guy was never going to win that stage, never in a million years, but he just camped on Milan's wheel. Perfect position. Didn't have any team help because they're here for some sort of GC. I think like Tiberi or something is on that team, and Caruso. Like they have multiple GC guys. They're not supporting him, and he gets third in the sprint because he just camps out in perfect position by himself and follows Milan and bags a podium. I mean, you could be doing that alone. He proved it. The Ewan decline has been steep, steep and shocking in some ways.
I mean, when a Cofidis sprinter beats you, you have to go take a hard look in the mirror that night.
No disrespect.
And I want to be fair though. So Benjamin Thomas, he is a world champion on the track, from what I surmise, correct?
Yeah, he's really good. He's a really good rider. Do not be fooled by his team affiliation. If you watch the early season French races, I always watch those and think like, ooh, Benjamin Thomas, maybe we're looking at a Tour de France GC situation here. But he's very good at sniping GC wins at small early season French races,
which is amazing. So if we look at, again, what is a trend that we're seeing right now in pro cycling? We're seeing people come off the track. You have Ghana, Milan, Thomas, just thus far in this race. We're seeing some really extraordinary performances. And have we seen people come off the track before? Yes, we saw Wiggins, we saw Geraint Thomas, others, but typically from more of a slightly different background than people who are going and winning sprints, right? They typically were coming from team pursuit and then going in the GC direction. That was the British cycling model. And now we have these pursuiters and they're winning sprints.
Yeah, there was a point yesterday where it was Ghana being caught by Kosani, who had Milan in his wheel. All three of those guys are team pursuit teammates for the Italian team.
It's wild.
The trackies are taking over. It makes sense, I guess. As I say that, I'm a little sad and concerned because the U.S. is probably having maybe we have the least amount of track racing we've ever had at the moment. We don't have a lot of tracks, but that does seem like the best way to develop big power, the type of big sustained power that is key to modern racing. I was listening to someone else, so my friend Daniel Freebay, he did a big documentary feature on the Grande Torino disaster that Andrew referenced in the beginning that I can throw a link to in the show notes. You should listen to it if you want to know more about that. And we'll circle back on that when we talk about Pog almost getting kicked out of the race. But he was interviewing a rider yesterday. I don't know who it was. I can't remember their name, but he was saying maybe 10 years ago, if you're pushing 400 watts sustained, you're in the front group, no problem. And now you're the 100th guy. So if you think about what's the type of rider that's used to pushing watts like that all the time, it's really you develop that ability on the track. So, maybe the fact that more power for longer is required to be at the front of modern cycling, that's why we're seeing more guys coming off the track, or maybe it's just a random occurrence. I don't know.
Yeah, a 400 watt FTP for an hour, that's not even getting you in the top 10 at a Cat 5 Dominguez Hills criterion anymore. I don't think.
No, yeah. You're off the back, perhaps.
I know we're not going to get into this, but shout out to Scott McGill, of course, won the Redlands Criterium and also took a stage win at the Tour of the Gila, which I love seeing. Scott, we're looking forward to having you on soon.
Scott, yeah, we're gonna track you down, Scott. You can't run from us.
We've been talking. He's coming on.
Hey everybody, it's Spencer. I just want to take a moment to talk about a new partner to the show and newsletter that I'm really excited about, and that's Tour Tracker. You can find them at the website, tourtracker.com, but what's really good is their app. If you get that Tour Tracker app, there's a lot in there that will help you follow the races incredibly closely, which is important for me because I'm in the US at the moment, so when I don't wake up at 4 a.m. to watch the start of the stage, so I kind of jump in around 6 a.m., and the Tour Tracker app will have exactly what's going on whenever you pop in. And it also has a time machine, so you can go back in time and see what you missed. It also has super detailed previews of each stage, including interactive profiles and maps, gradients, and detailed gradients of every climb, a live race coverage, including GPS tracking on the maps and profiles, so you can tell where each rider is, what group they're in. You know, a lot of times these groups are breaking up and you're like, what the heck's going on? Who is where? Well, the GPS tracking on the live race coverage will solve a lot of that confusion for you, and you can see where everyone is on the road, what group they're in, how far apart each group is. It's incredibly helpful. They also have a fantasy cycling game built in, so you can play fantasy cycling against everyone in the app. It's really fun to do. I highly recommend it. And this is hugely important, a complete set of non-spoiler race notifications before, during, and after each day. I know a lot of people have jobs and they can't just sit around and follow cycling as it happens, especially here in North America during the workday. So being able to go into the app and know that the race isn't going to be spoiled for you, and then follow along as though you're watching live as you watch the replay, is incredibly important. But the thing I like the most about this is it has a great map feature. You just click that map tab and it gives you a detailed map of every stage. And to me, it's really important because a lot of times you're watching these races, you look at the profile, it doesn't do a great job of telling you, where is this going on? What part of the world are we in? Where are we going to and from? And if you're at the race, it lets you see where the group is at all times. So if you're, especially at a circuit course or one of these mountain stages where they crisscross around the same area, and you can catch a lot of the race live if you have this map feature that tells you exactly where the peloton is and where it will be in the future. So check out Tour Tracker. I've been loving it. If you can't wake up for the start of every stage and you can't just sit there and closely watch for 4 or 5 hours every day, this is going to be a key piece of how you watch races from now on. One other thing I wanted to run by you. Tadej Pogačar. And what's nice is we've kind of forgotten about him. We've had 2 stages where he's been in the back, except for the letter from the UCI saying we're going to expel you from the race if you don't change your clothes. So he has a 46-second GC lead right now. People, I think, came out of the opening weekend, and I don't know, like, people, RFK had a worm in his brain. I think the entire cycling fandom culture might have brain worms as well, because we came out of that opening weekend, and I felt like the general wisdom was, wow, that was kind of disappointing from Pogačar. He only wins one stage, only has a 45-second lead. Like, what a bum. He looked tired on the summit finish. Did you notice he was looking back? Like, people were saying this. It's like he has the largest ever winning gap on that climb. It's not a climb that lends itself to a lot of big gaps. And he now has a 46-second gap. That is equal to or greater than a lot of the total winning gaps in the last 8 years of this race. And I have bad news for everyone. Tomorrow is it's like a Strade Bianche-esque stage. He's going to extend his lead there. Friday is a long time trial. I was surprised to see this. It's a 40K time trial with the last 6K being a climb. He's going to put big gaps into people there. Like, he could be, and then you have a mountain stage on Saturday. He could go into Sunday with like a 2-minute lead, and I don't know what anyone else says, but I'd say 2-minute lead after the first week of racing. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. Of course, I'm thinking of Benyam Girmay right now, which I think we need to talk about. My read on that situation, what they said on the broadcast was that his second and third wrecks were because they had pulled the bike off the roof of the car, tires were overinflated, classic situation. We've seen this before, of course. Is that really possible?
Yeah.
Modern professional cycling, you're not checking the tire pressure on the bike. Would that mean you also started with the wrong tire pressure?
Yeah, that was exactly my thought. And is that information confirmed? Did they just say that on the broadcast? I've seen this passed around as though it's fact. And I
don't think it's a fact.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because let's say the spare bike had overinflated tires. That would have to mean his regular bike had overinflated tires, because in what world would you decrease the pressure on the race bike but not on the spare bike, unless you just absolutely messed up? That doesn't make any sense at all, unless he stopped mid-stage and took air out of his tires, which I don't think he did.
Only Vanderpool does that, right? He did it like 3 times at Tour of Flanders. What a badass.
I don't know if that's totally caught on yet, but I actually have a hard time believing that they wouldn't anticipate rain. I mean, I'm sure they have the Apple Weather app. It's not the best, but you could probably say, I think it's going to rain. Let's maybe decrease the pressure in the spare bike tires. But you see weird stuff. You remember the Denmark start at the Tour de France a few years ago, where Stefan Bissinger at the Tour, on the opening stage, he was like slipping and sliding around, clearly had no control with his tires. So maybe it could happen, but that seemed I thought that information seemed a little suspect to me. I would like to look into that further.
What it looked like to me is someone who's had enough really horrible crashes and comebacks that after a crash, he's just scared and applied his brakes at the wrong time on that second wreck. He had a really bad line on that descent. It reminded me of an experience I had in the Cat Force San Dimas stage race in, I think, 2004 in pouring rain. I was like, I think that's what I look like while I was trying to go down a hill.
So what happens is, I've done a little riding in the rain myself, and you can feel really confident until you crash, and then you're messed up. I think that's probably what happened to him. Just after the first crash, and you're trying to catch a group, so you're going maybe a little too fast than you should. I think he probably just was out of sorts. It is a bummer for him. I mean, he's had like injuries for, feels like a year maybe. And he was just getting back. Thought his sprint looked good. I mean, I hope if his hip's not broken, you'd assume he just starts training for the Tour, which isn't the worst thing in the world.
This is something people potentially aren't thinking about, but I think this is an example of, you think that Wout and Jonas physically are going to come back super rapidly, which might happen for the Tour. However, unless you're not completely unconscious, like I suppose Fabio Jakobsen, then you're going to remember the wreck. And I think it's going to have a pretty severe psychological impact on your risk tolerance, which you have to have a high disregard for your body and well-being to be a professional cyclist generally.
Yeah. And most people, I see this 2 ways. I feel like most people, be like, Jonas, man, how can he even race? But that's how a normal person would think. But Jonas, I mean, I don't know him personally, but he seems like the way he was attacking downhills for no reason whatsoever in the wet early in the season kind of makes me think that he's able to wipe that stuff from his brain. But most people and most pro riders are affected by that. And it is hard to come back.
The before and after might be striking.
Well, I mean, I guess we don't know.
We don't know. We'll see what happens. Did you see that?
So he's on the bike, not going to the team's pre-Tour de France training camp. What's going on there?
Jonas?
Yeah.
I don't think he's physically ready, and I think they're just covering it up because we're going to see GC Wout, and they don't want other teams to know that yet. So they don't want to telegraph it, is my vibe.
It does kind of seem like that, because if he's on the bike, he's fine, right? They had this hostage video. Did you see this?
Yeah, I didn't. He's like, the guy's not okay. I don't even.
That has to be the only conclusion you could come to if he can't go to a training camp, that he just isn't able. If you can't train at the level needed to even attend a training camp, you're not going to be ready in 6 weeks for the Tour de France. It's just
look, Spencer, you're on the volcano or you're off the volcano. Like, that's it. There's no in between. Like, this training alone at home thing. Sorry, you're not going to win the Tour.
No, I mean, this is the time when you win the Tour right now, training hard. And that's why Pogačar is training through this first week. But one thing I wanted to give you a platform for before we leave. How are you doing with the old Max service where this race is on so far?
Oh, wow. The 4X fast forward, I know I've sent you some screenshots from the trainer. By the way, the Zwift subscription price increase, we're going to have to talk about another time. I feel like a line may have been crossed here.
Binomics. Inflation's out of hand.
Yeah, my whoosh starting to look more and more appealing. We're going to be exploring it in the near future. So yeah, the 4X fast forward is hitting me kind of hard, and you now get the Whoop ad at the beginning, which to me, it feels like we've gone down the slippery slope of, I think they're going to inject ads into the subscription you're paying on top of the subscription to watch the race, which almost makes me feel like we need to go back to 3 terrestrial TV channels and watching this on Wide World of Sports.
Yeah, we could do a 7-month podcast series on they're like, cable's dying, so we have to make these streaming services. But it's like, you're killing cable with these streaming services. What if you just never did Max or never did Peacock, which Peacock seems designed specifically to destroy NBC? I don't understand that at all. And yeah, the Whoop ad I feel like is fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just
pleasant ad. But it does make me think, okay, so you're paying, it's like $20 a month for Max. Then you pay the add-on fee. I believe it's like $10 a month. And then I think what's going to happen next is they're going to start inserting ads in the middle of the race and say, if you want to get rid of those ads, you pay us another $10 a month to dump those, which that's not fantastic.
Yeah, just to give an indication of what a sick person I am, it hasn't been nice here in Mid-Coast Maine almost to date. We haven't had a lot of days where it's really nice enough to be like, you know what, I really want to go out for a ride. Today it was nice enough, and I was on a trainer watching the race on TV, so I'd be prepared for this podcast during a portion of the day. And I just was thinking, I'm paying a $20 Zwift subscription to watch a $20 plus $10 subscription product with an ad. What's going on?
And wait till Zwift starts throwing ads right in the middle of your rides. I mean, my wife had a good point about Zwift. I was complaining about the price, saying, I got to get rid of this thing. And she says, well, you do use it every day. So.
Oh, no. Equally. Yeah. Like, I think it's a great product. And I've been part of moving a paywall before, and I've seen what that can do for a business. And if you have a product that people really love that they'll pay for, then, fair play, as Geraint Thomas's pub would say.
So before we go, and in all seriousness, I've thought about going to MyWoosh, but Zwift does pace partner rides. I'm addicted. I don't know if I could
we don't know what MyWoosh does.
Good point.
We have no idea. We don't know.
Yeah. And if you don't know, if you are not super fans of this podcast, MyWoosh is, I believe, an Abu Dhabi based, funded, free version of Zwift, basically. And it takes like a supercomputer to run.
Well, it might only be on Windows currently. That might be a rate limiter for us, but they sponsor Pog. You'll see MyWoosh on the rear end of all of the UAE riders. My coach, Zach Nair, just won one of their, they have like a Sunday World Cup race every week that's got a really massive cash payout for those esports events. So yeah, there's a lot going on the platform. We're just not sure quite what yet, but we will check it out.
So your best friend, Geraint Thomas, I mean, he just keeps, the insert GIF. He can't keep getting away with this. Like, it's getting ridiculous at this point. The guy can just call his shot. Age doesn't seem to matter. He's going faster now than when he won the Tour. I think he's done it. I think the chemistry set was perfectly calibrated. And I don't mean that in a
jiffy bag kind of way.
Yeah, not in a jiffy bag way. I just mean in a starving yourself and training really hard type of way. I think the fact that he looks so good in this first week, he's not cracking. I do think he's going to get second at this race. This is unbelievable. Like, I almost feel like we don't talk about it enough. This guy's turning 38 years old during this race, and he's racing faster than he was 5 years ago.
And Ineos tried to nuke him, I believe, the past 2 off seasons, right? Like, they tried to roll this guy.
GC rider. Yeah, and they were trying to fire him.
Yeah, and here he is. He's like the cat that came back, and he's going deep. And he looks damn good. He looks handsome. He looks strong. And I haven't purchased the research paper yet. I think I'm going to cough up to $25 because the study just came out of a writer who we believe to be Geraint Thomas. And I want to learn more about some of those super long zone 1 and the Steven Seiler model rides that he was doing that I'm assuming were totally fasted. He had a few amino acids and somebody yelling at him from a car, which that's a difference versus an amateur, right? Like, you got a car yelling at you for 8 hours.
Yeah. And that's got to be why he's not, like Pogačar can show up at any race anytime and be very good. But if you're doing that, that's so hard on your body, and you could see how you'd show up to the Vuelta and just be terrible because you're like,
Yeah.
I haven't eaten in a month, and I've been training really hard in zone 1, or really a long time in zone 1. One thing though I was thinking about, I was on a ride today, and in the Front Range, like the mid coast of Maine, Andrew, we do not have the best weather in May, and it was quite windy, but not even super windy. I was descending on Zip 303s. And I was getting blown around. And I was thinking, if I was on 55 millimeter deep wheels, I don't think I'd feel that good descending these mountains. And that's what Pogačar is doing. I'd say that's not an insignificant X factor for the rest of this race, and why you shouldn't totally write Geraint Thomas off for potentially scooping up the football, running it in from the 1 yard line if Pogačar drops it by falling, crashing out of the race.
Completely agree. And while we discussed this in the previous episode, we know that Geraint Thomas doesn't have a high degree of sensitivity to the exactness of the different aspects of his bike fit. However, he is on the correct size bike. The guy looks like he's riding a 58 probably. And we know that Pog is basically, I went in and looked it up. Actually, I found a Canyon size chart, and I was like, I'm curious what height person would be riding a 48.5 centimeter bike. In Canyon, that's an extra small, and they recommend it for people up to 5 feet 1 inches. Pog is 5'10", I believe.
It's absurd. I mean, Geraint Thomas does ride a really big bike, and I feel like it makes him look slower. There's a trend where all these bikes are shrinking and everyone looks like a giant on their bike. And my stupid brain sees it and thinks like, oh, that guy's fast. Look how big he is relative to his bike. And Geraint Thomas looks slower. I mean, he can't whip the bike around like it's a child's BMX bike below him, but it does give you a lot more stability. I think I got tricked into buying a 56 gravel bike because I bought the Canyon Small, which is like essentially a 56 centimeter bike, and it's pretty sturdy. I like it. I maybe the 130 stem isn't necessary. So I don't know. The one concern I have is that I've seen people say like, oh, if he was that tired on Europa, how is he going to win the Tour? I think that line of thinking is almost completely unproductive, since that's just a long way from now. I mean, I don't even think it's just like, that's a completely different season almost than right now. And you can't try to connect these two things.
Yeah, you got to win the moment in front of you. That's how you win a Grand Tour. You got to chip away. Just go to the coalface and swing your pickaxe.
Yeah, he's swinging like a pickaxe, and it's taking out boulder-sized chunks of gold every time he does it. I mean, I think this time trial, that's my prediction for this week. I think this time trial is going to be a holy SHIT moment. Ghana is sadly probably not going to win, and the Italian TV will be very sad, just like they were at the World Championships. I think Pogačar is going to roast that time trial. Well, what's your prediction for the rest of this week, Andrew?
Yeah, I think that's hot. A question I have for you is, Jonathan Milan, obviously he's not going to do great in an uphill time trial, but for his height, the guy looks quite lean to me. He looks almost GC Ghana lean. What insights do you have about the types of time trial parcours where he might excel?
Oh, I should have looked into this. He is a good, I don't know if you watched the Tour of Romandy opening stage, but it was like a 4-minute intercity time trial. I mean, if Milan was there trying, he wins that thing. That guy would crush that. I'm trying to look up right now time trials where he's done well. I mean,
I think I watched that Tour of Romandy stage because, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's so many potholes and so many patches in the road. I thought someone was going to die. It was that time trial, right?
Yes. My wife and I just checked into our hotel in Paris. Like, we can't go out, babe. Romandy's on. There's 3-minute time trial. Eurosport on. So yeah, I was making sure I didn't just make this up. So he got third at the Tirreno Adriatico opening time trial this year.
Okay.
And if you're familiar with that time trial, it's just like a hot dog. It goes out, comes back, pancake flat. Juan Ayuso won, which is really impressive. Ghana finished 1 second back. Milan finishes 12 seconds back, which is good for a sprinter who's not a time trialist. So that's how you can start to see, you can actually see why the stage broke down today, because who in their right mind would want to go to the line with a fresh sprinter that can also do a nice 10-minute time trial. Like I'm trying to see that. Yeah, winning time is 11 minutes. So the guy can put out massive watts for 5 to 10 minutes to get himself in position and then really act as his own lead out guy and then hold what your max wattage is for 20 seconds in the sprint. So I hesitate to call him unbeatable, but in perfect conditions, he's probably as close to unbeatable as we've seen since someone like Kittel in a straight sprint.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. I don't know who else has a shot in this time trial. If you had to pick an unexpected winner, like let's say, I don't know, Pog has a really unexpected mechanical. We see his pool noodle sticking out because he rolls the tubeless tire. Who might we see
in the time trial?
Yeah,
I think Ghana. I think Ghana's probably really going for this.
Yeah,
an Italian time trial. I mean, when he goes for these Giro d'Italia time trials, he's so good. As we saw, he's in good climbing form. He's very thin, very lean, so the last 6K climb won't bother him. Tomorrow, I should say we've talked about how Pogačar is going to win this thing easy. Tomorrow's stage not a cakewalk. The fact that there's significant gravel sections. Do you remember this? I think it's a little bit easier than it, but it was similar to the stage in the 2021 Giro d'Italia where Remco was supposed to be leading Quickstep, and then he completely melted down and started he got really mad at the team and was riding 6 meters behind the bunch the whole time, and then was changing bikes. So it is a hard stage that you it's not crazy to think you'll see some GC contenders with mechanicals. It's not crazy to think that could be Tadej. He'll have to try to get time back. I mean, that would, for pure excitement, that would probably be the best outcome.
2-part final question for you, Spencer. 1, does Cav have a chance of actually winning a stage in the Tour de France? And 2, where is Cav?
Cav's in Hungary, checking out that Viktor Orban brand of fascism. I should double check that. I'm pretty sure he's at Hungary. He's at Hungary not winning. All that would point to not going to win a Tour de France stage. Cavendish could win a Tour de France stage. That guy, he's a magician.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say anymore. I think he would have probably won a stage last year if he didn't crash out.
Yeah, I think he's going to win a stage. And I love that this is the lead up, that he's won he's won absolutely nothing. It's almost the converse of Geraint Thomas.
Yeah,
actually.
It is.
He just he's not aged well. And yet I believe in Cav. I think he's going to win a stage at the Tour.
You could. I mean, I spent a lot. It's funny that these two guys come out of the same system too. It's that Rod Ellingworth run British cycling track system.
Yeah.
I mean, they're obviously both really talented, but they probably have a level of relaxation and confidence that almost no other professional has. What do they have left to prove to anyone?
Yeah.
And they really know how to peak at the right time. And I would guess that almost no one else in the Peloton peaks anymore, except Jonas. I mean, Jonas is very good at it and dominates the Tour because of it. And that they're allowing themselves these goalies, just no form, a fallow period. And then you build correctly, probably as you should, but not many people do because they don't have the confidence to do it. And that's why, that you can just feel like they come out of nowhere and do these great performances.
A lot of kids to clothe and feed as well. Right? I mean,
yeah.
He could, you know what I mean? I think a win could go a long way for Cav. The guy has a long, storied history of being a champion, and one more right now might be good for the family.
People do. I mean, I think Cavendish is doing very well, but I feel like I used to hear this on the Cycling Tips podcast a lot, not to call them out, just first thing that came to my head, but he's 38 years old. It'd always be well, how much money does one person need? Does Froome need another 5 million euros a year? But it's he's only in his late 30s, and that money's got to last you the rest of your life. You probably could live a long time. You got a lot of kids, a lot of expenses. You got to make as much money as you possibly can when you're in your earning years as a professional athlete. I feel like that's not fully respected by the outside media at times.
Yeah, and they're not making NFL star money. And also, not all of these guys are Adam Hansen, who I believe was running a software engineering company, from hotel rooms while he was racing the Tour, and also had a custom carbon footwear company. I'd love a pair of your shoes.
I think he's
be in touch.
Like a big landlord too in the Czech Republic.
Guy's a baller.
He is a baller. We should all be going to like Adam Hansen weekends, like retreats where he's like giving speeches on how to optimize our life. All right. Well, thanks, Andrew. I've got to go. I got to go write the newsletter for today's stage. So I'm going to rush that out. But we will talk after this time trial, after this mountain stage, probably on the rest day. If that works for you, we'll check in then.
I look forward to reading that newsletter.
Oh, now there's more pressure. Well, now I won't be able to get it out. It's just too much pressure.
Just pull through.
All right. Thanks. And we'll talk to you soon.